Hey, I'm back with another meta update. Last week we had some of the biggest paper events in the Apex Invitational and PBG's TCG convention in Miami. So there's a lot to talk about today. We're going to look at Pixelborn's metadata for last week too. I'll show example deck lists as we go, and I'll leave a link to the Lorcana meta subreddit where you can find top player profiles and recent winning lists. Let's get started, as always, with our Pixelborn data. Thank you, Pavel, for sharing the data, and to everyone who turns it into readable infographics. A quick look at the meta shows your Pixelborn experience will continue to be dominated by our top two decks. Amber Steel still holds an overall positive win rate, but Ruby Amethyst showed its lowest overall win rate yet at just 48.6%. Amber Sapphire continues to round out the top three. Sapphire Steel remains in 4th place, but Steel has replaced Amethyst as the most popular Emerald pairing. I've seen a lot more testing with mill and mid-range decks. We'll see if a good list settles. I always use data filtered to include at least one of the top 100 players as I talk about meta movements here. With this filter, you can still expect over 50% of your matches on ladder to be against the top two decks, but if we look at all games played, you'll see a much more diverse meta experience. Amber Steel only holds a 19% meta share, while Ruby Amethyst holds a 15% meta share. Interesting to see how much more popular Emerald Amethyst is overall, consistently taking 3rd place. While this data will likely better represent your ladder experience, including data on all games can muddle our win rate integrity. Looking at what is successful in a more competitive environment will only help you better succeed in your environment. Alright, on to the list. I'll showcase Vundalin's Wonder Wheel deck again for Amber Steel. We continue to see a positive win rate into Ruby Amethyst. Control has yet to adapt well into the variety of Amber Steel decks on the ladder. Amber Sapphire seems to have found a solution though. I'm still in favor of this hybrid list, but there is a revolving cycle within the Amber Steel versus Amber Steel meta, where lists go from aggro closer to mid-range to gain an edge until they've become so value-driven that they lose to aggro again. Ruby Amethyst is looking rough again this week, but when Sapphire Steel is gaining popularity to prey on Amber Steel, Control looks like a good place to be. This list is a recent adaptation from top players, finding room for the full 4 Rafiki to combat aggro, and Jafar is becoming a popular tech against a whole new world decks, while getting to huge numbers in mirror matches as well. I've seen a lot of experimenting with how many White Rabbit's Pocket Watch to run, as setting up big broom turns with Mickey Wayward Sorcerer can swing the mirror. Amber Sapphire continues to look good into the meta this week. I'm showcasing Jeebus' list, who has opted to include Lantern as additional acceleration. The additional ink advantage this deck generates can allow it to take advantage of a whole new world refills. One jump ahead might seem like a better option than Lantern, as both are acceleration, but one jump ahead's additional ink isn't limited to characters. However, being able to exert Lantern for ink immediately is less of a tempo sacrifice in the early game, though we'll look at some Amber Sapphire lists that did well in paper later with a different take. I've always said this deck requires practice to succeed. You need a good meta knowledge to navigate matches well. There aren't any free wins like the way Steel Song's Grab Your Sword or Control's Be Prepared can decimate a game. When the data looks this favorable, it might be worth taking the time to learn this deck. Sapphire Steel continues to prey on Amber Steel's popularity as the deck is best positioned to take advantage of a meta full of a whole new world decks. The combination of Fishbone Quill and Bell generate a massive ink advantage that allows you to put out big threats way ahead of schedule. Pilots are still working to find favor in the Control matchup, and the deck might be falling out of favor as everyone else is adapting to better take advantage of a whole new world themselves. Emerald Steel jumps into 5th. I'm showcasing Zeph's 65 card list. It's a mid-rangey, aggressive-ish deck with a line to mill out your opponent by recycling a whole new world with do it again effects. The deck can switch between roles effectively, recycling Grab Your Swords against aggro or Mother Knows Best to buy time. Don't mind the 24 Uninkables, just draw well and have a good time. I'm going to breeze through the rest of this data faster than usual because we have a lot to cover from the weekend tournaments. I'm glad to see Amber Ruby is holding its popularity. It does a great job taking down other Amber decks. There's a lot of movement between the rest of the decks here, but I want to switch to the win rate data to see what pops out. Amber Amethyst jumped up to have the most successful win rate. I've been down on the deck the last couple weeks, but Dude TCG has been seeing a lot of success with the deck. Sapphire Amethyst continues to see a successful win rate. Full QC is in the top 25 and has been killing it with this list. Alright, let's get into the big events from this weekend. We'll start with PPG's highly anticipated tournament in Miami with over 200 participants. They gave us a total total breakdown, and the paper meta doesn't look too different from Pixelborn's outside of Emerald Amethyst's representation. The conversions here really cement Amber Steel as the best deck of the format. I do want to talk about how much of an impact time limits have on paper results. In the Pixelborn data, we can see the longest game last week was a control mirror that took almost 2.5 hours to complete. That's with turn timers, so slow play isn't even a big factor. In paper, resolving effects can take even more time, and many control players couldn't close out a game in the mirror before time was called. Once you're in the draw bracket, you're paired with the other control players who had a mirror match in their last round that they couldn't finish. It almost creates two brackets, where you have a win-loss bracket and a draw bracket. And since the draw bracket consists mostly of control players, they just face the mirror match all day. Two things happen from this. Control mirrors reduce the number of control players advancing in standings, and the rest of the players face significantly less control players. This means that decks that prey on control but not steal song are at a significantly larger disadvantage than one might assume based on initial representation. Time constraints are necessary for a tournament this size, but actually warp the results. It's something to keep in mind if you're considering playing control at your next paper event. Regardless though, congrats to everyone who worked hard and played well. Amber Steel took 9 of the top 16 and won the event. Quick shout out to Emerald Sapphire getting in 16th, I was happy to see that. On to the Apex Invitational. This invitational was for winning players from various tournaments, so we can really weigh the results here as arguably the highest level of competitive Lorcana gameplay. Players had a better guess at what their opponents might be playing based on what they won their qualifier tournaments with. There was a bit of strategy to metagaming the tournament, and Amber Sapphire came out on top as the deck to beat Amber Steel. I showed Jeebus's list earlier, but the team that took Apex was running one jump ahead and Bell over other options, and it worked well for them. I like what Bell can do in the Steel Song match. Keeping an ink advantage when they refill your hand helps you keep up with their pressure, and questing for 5 can close out the game quick. Congrats to everyone again for the hard work and great games. I enjoyed a weekend full of entertaining gameplay and commentary. That's it for this week's meta update. If you want to discuss the meta more, talk about decks, or just want to hang out, consider joining the Discord. Thank you so much for watching. Love you all and have a magical day.